Hey, it's me, Rose La Fabiloca, and we are going to take down white supremacy, one pendejo at a time. This is the Sabe podcast. Mi gente, welcome back to the Sabe podcast, where we discuss social, political, and economic issues facing minority communities in the present day. Before we begin, if you haven't already, please subscribe to my podcast and share if you care as we take down white supremacy one pendejo at a time. Today's episode is going to be formatted a little bit differently because typically I talk to the entire range of listeners, right? But today I am exclusively focusing on my wake-up call to my community, the Hispanic Latino community. You see, for those that aren't aware, the Hispanic community at this time, and really always in a lot of ways, has been extremely divided. We have the woke and then we have the asleep. And the asleep are mostly the baby boomers within our community, of course, just like most races and ethnic groups. But we also have these outliers amongst us, younger people, that just still don't seem to get it. And this is my wake-up call to them, the ones who are asleep. Now, I've collected over the past few months like screenshots and comments from various different platforms of people of Latino background and the ignorant things that they are saying on social media regarding the 2020 election, Donald Trump, Black Lives Matter, GOYA, kids in cages, and beyond. Now, you might say like, oh, we need an entire episode about this. Yeah, we do. I'm going to tell you why. This episode shouldn't only matter to Hispanics, but to every other race and ethnic group as well. And it lies in the fact that shortly we will be a minority group who, for the first time and possibly ever, I believe, will be coming out of its minority status and into a majority status. This matters. At the rate in which things are moving, we will take over the seat of the majority power that the white people currently hold. We are essentially, through sheer numbers, going to take over the U.S. in many key areas. So when you really break down why so many racist white people are concerned about immigration, this is one of the reasons. Because if we take control over the majority of the voting population, that means we will have the power to defund the entities putting money in their own pockets and reroute that same money into the pockets of others, especially putting those monies toward our own special interests. Like, personally, for me, if I was president, I would make the pricing of fresh fruits and vegetables more monetarily accessible than the bullshit in the inner aisles. And that would put money back into the farms and into the hands of farm workers, because our farm workers are slaves to this country because of regulation. They do not get paid a surviving wage, not even a living wage. I'm not even talking about a living wage, okay? Because our living wage, like our minimum wage, is bullshit. Like, people can't live on that shit. But even worse, it's not even a surviving wage. And guess what? Most of them are Hispanic. So yeah, that shit would matter to me. And how is all of this so? Well, according to Pew Hispanic Center projections, Hispanics will account for 40% of the growth in the eligible electorate in the U.S. between now, 2020, and 2030. That's just 10 years from now, okay? That's just 10 years from now, you guys. At which time, in 2030, 40 million Hispanics will be eligible to vote, up from the 23.7 million now, okay? So we're going to double in 10 years because of how many kids we freaking have, okay? Yeah, you heard that right. Sooner rather than later, okay, the racist people's biggest nightmare is going to come to life. You will not walk into a room and say hello anymore. You're going to walk into the room in the future and say hola. And it won't be ha 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 anymore. It's going to be ja 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 as ha 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 ha. And they are pissed about it. So what do these projections and facts tell us about ourselves, right? Well, the fact is, we will be doubling our voting population in the next 10 years. But that is just a surface level fact, right? That's just an overhead fact. But let's dig a little bit deeper to the inner layers and the inner workings of what that will mean for our community. Because that sentence means a lot more than just that. And just that, it says a ton, but even just there, we cannot stop there. It means several other nuances, okay, that we really need to start getting into, because Hispanic people, I don't know what y'all are doing. I really don't. I don't know what it is that you think is important in life at this point. Like, I don't know if I'm just... Am I disconnected? I don't think that I am. I'm pretty sure I'm deeper in this community than I've ever been in my life. And I'm still confused on how you guys are still confused off of basic shit that you should know by now. And it's like, I'm really tired of the fact that we focus on dumb shit way too much. And I understand that people in every ethnic group and every race can say the same thing about the people in their community. I get that. But the thing is that those people are not going to be doubling the voting population in 10 years. So who do you think out of everybody needs to get their shit together? Okay? Get your mierda together. So let's go back to the several things that this is going to mean for our community, things that you should be caring about, things that you should be thinking about, things that you should be advocating for now. 1, we have to begin leaving this minority mindset that we have with each other, that crabs in a barrel bullshit. Because when we stop seeing ourselves as inferior or minor to something else, aka white people, we are going to be more inspired to aspire. We're going to see more Latin-owned businesses popping up. We are going to see more Latinos pursue careers in the arts, because a lot of Hispanic families don't think that careers in the arts are real careers. Hiroshima bomb on y'all. We're going to see more Latinos embracing their history and their heritage and be truly representative of those needs in the workplace and beyond. So demanding more from our employers, because we're going to have a majority voice. Like, Black people are considered minorities, right? Because they only make up roughly 13% of the population. But Black people and Black culture doesn't see itself in its reflection as an inferior or minor race or culture. They focus on the future, on the pursuit of happiness and real freedom. We as a collective really need to adopt that spirit as we go on this road of becoming a majority population one day. We have to see who we want to be, not just where we came from, okay? And I think a lot of Hispanics struggle with that. And I think it's great to look back. It's great to know our history. It's great to have tradition. But we cannot let tradition hold us back from walking into a destiny that is very apparent, both as individuals and as a collective, as a community. So 2, we're going to see more Latinos pursue higher education because they're going to want to pursue careers in fields that their families don't have an already established presence in. Look at white kids, for example. A lot of well-off white children not only have trust funds, but at super young, they have access to opportunities to work under their parents' business or a family member's business because of generational wealth. A lot of them aren't even college age yet before they already have a resume in place. This is how you create and maintain generational wealth. As minorities, we haven't had that head start as kids because we have to create the head start. But in order to create the head start, we need access to the support that is needed from your community and the government. What good is seed money and investments if you are constantly being turned down for rental spaces in good locations because of your ethnic group, right? Because this is the kind of struggles that our people went through. They were not invited to create generational wealth in the 60s, in the 80s, in the 2000s. What good is working a good credit score if the bank turns you down for a business loan because they didn't realize you were Hispanic until you met them in person? We are going to see Latinos get educated and open up new avenues of income that our parents and grandparents who worked as janitors and landscapers and office cleaners only dreamed of. You see, in our families, it's not that we haven't owned our own businesses. Landscaping is a business, but we were only able to do that in the spaces and to the capacity that the white people wanted to see us in, like mowing their backyards and cleaning up after their school-aged children when lunch at school was over. Being in the background, this is where they like us. We are entering a new era where it won't matter if white people like us by then or not, because there is power in numbers. So this thing about trying to whitewash yourself and please the white man, for what purpose? Because we're already going to be a large percentage of the voting population. And if we continue to multiply in those numbers, then we are going to become the majority. It mathematically won't matter what a percentage of white people think about us. And they hate it. Number 3, with this newfound sense of responsibility, we are going to learn our history and push for the education system to make Latino history a part of the curriculum. If 40% of the voting population is Hispanic, wouldn't those people need to understand who they even are in order to vote in a country they're supposed to ideally understand? And with that comes the idea I talked about in my Juneteenth episode. Black history is American history. And if we don't see our large population status as a responsibility, the school system will continue to water down Black history, and we can't have that. Because they're not even teaching Hispanic history like that to begin with. We have already seen the negative impact identity crisis within the Black community has had mentally in individuals like Stacey Dash and Terry Crews and Ben Carson. When the African American community regresses, so does the Hispanic community, because we overlap with them in too many ways to ignore. And we have Black people in our ethnic group. So number 4, we will need to actually be getting involved. For far too long, Hispanics have always taught their kids privacy and how to keep your head down and focus on yourself. Focus on yourself, mijo. Because Hispanics saw the way Black people were being treated and felt like in order for us to get what we wanted, in order to have a place here, we couldn't act like them, okay? Whatever quote them is. Whether it was a racial microaggression or whatever the fuck, this is how a lot of Hispanic people have raised their kids. We couldn't be loud and stir up controversy and movements. And actually, let me be clear, Hispanics have actually gotten involved in a lot of movements in America, but a lot of those movements for rights and equality were fought for by the Mexicans, okay? So let's not have a revisionist history about Hispanics partaking in movements. It's not even, I don't even want to say Hispanics. I want to say Mexicans. Like, we should just call a spade a spade. When it comes to movements in America and the groundwork, laying the foundation for the rest of us to be here, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban, whatever, that is on the backs of Mexican people. And sometimes I feel like as a Hispanic population, we don't give Mexicans their well-earned and deserved credit. They were here fighting invaders for hundreds of years just to be treated as if they're new kids on the block. And worst of all, they don't get credit from their own damn people. Like, Caribbeans should be thanking them for helping to pave the way in this country. And yet we have the nerve to get offended when someone mistakes us for Mexican. Why? Why are you offended to be mistaken for one of the most hardworking ethnic groups in this country? You want to be American so badly, but are offended to be mistaken for a Native American because Mexicans are Native American, okay? Like, what is wrong with y'all? Please check your prejudices. Fuck, I don't understand why we're still having this conversation. Jesus. And you guys know exactly what we're talking about, what I'm talking about. I know that you were in school, people calling you Mexican and you were Puerto Rican, or people calling you Mexican and you were Dominican, or people calling you Mexican and you're a Salvadorian, people calling you Mexican and you're from Honduras. I know. And you know what everyone's reaction is? I'm not Mexican. I'm whatever you are, okay? That's the reaction that people have when people mistake them for Mexican. Why? Because they see how Mexicans are treated when it comes to immigration, illegal immigration specifically, and they're trying to disconnect and remove themselves from that sort of viewpoint that a lot of American people, whether white or black or whatever, have of us when it comes to coming here illegally. And you guys want to remove yourself so far away from your own people. That makes no fucking sense to me. But then on Univision or some other bullshit Latina magazine, we want to talk about kumbaya and all this bullshit, okay? No, there is no kumbaya. We've been divided for a long time. Not only are we divided when it comes to race, whether you're light skin or dark skin or whatever, but also by country. Because there, even in America, this bullshit of Puerto Rico versus DR and all that ridiculousness, this immaturity, and people want to say, oh, it's not that deep, it's not that deep. It is that deep. I have to disagree, because my father's family did not like my mother when they first met her, and her being Dominican was part of that, okay? So people very recently have had prejudices against their own fucking community. It can't make this shit up. And it's wild because a lot of people, a lot of white people, a lot of black people have no idea that this is the kind of shit that be going on in our community. And I'm like, you guys don't even fucking know. I'm going to lay this shit out though. You already know. That's why it's called Jatu Sabe podcast. For those who are wondering still what that means. Jatu Sabe means you already know. So this is my moment of you already know. And the people that are Hispanic, they know what I'm talking about. Maybe it doesn't apply to you, every single thing I just said, but you've seen it. You know it's a problem, but you just don't say nothing. You wait for people like me to be sitting here laying everyone's shit out. I need a fucking drink. Now, all of these are various ways in which becoming a majority voting population is going to alter not only Hispanic, but American life as a whole. Listen. Already, we are seeing massive changes on our planet. Spanish is the second most spoken language in the world today after Chinese. Spanish is predicted to be a future language of business and commerce, and one that will be a very lucrative language to learn, to prepare for the coming years. So while we've discussed that you don't need to be a fluent Spanish speaker to be considered Hispanic, because Spanish was a language thrusted upon our ancestors through colonization, okay? It wasn't a native language. It would be lucrative and helpful, though, for your pockets and your children's pockets if you taught them both English and Spanish. I'm just saying. This is just facts, okay? I don't know what your guys' opinion is on learning Spanish if you're Hispanic or not. But the reality is, we can't continue to live in a world where we speak one language. And for those who haven't had a decent amount of exposure to Spanish as a language, the reason why Spanish is so far-reaching is because it's so easy to learn, especially if you already know English. English is a difficult language to learn. I think a lot of people underrate that shit. They don't realize how fucking hard it is to learn English. English makes no fucking sense most of the time, okay? It really doesn't. And it's a weird language. And honestly, it sounds like shit. Let's just be honest. It doesn't sound nice. It's very harsh. This fucking, a lot of people don't like English. They just don't realize it, okay? The reason why I say that is because when Americans speak English with a standard, American way of speaking, people are like, okay, but when let a British person speak English, let a fucking Hispanic person speak English, let a freaking Irish person speak English, let an Italian girl speak English, and all of a sudden everyone's fucking with the accent, okay? So people like English and fetishize that shit only when they hear it in an accent. When it's just standard bullshit, people don't think about it. But when you hear somebody have an accent with it, they're like, like all of a sudden everyone's all into all of that. So it's because our language fucking sucks, and it sounds better when people from other places speak it, because honestly it sounds like shit. It doesn't sound as nice as Spanish or Italian. It's just it is what it is. But overall, my point is that this is the world we are heading into, you guys. Like, I'm not fucking around with y'all. I'm really not. It's a lot of you that have started listening to my podcast and sending me messages being like, damn. And I'm like, I know. You guys thought. I don't know what you guys thought. But yeah, there's some shit fucking going on in my brain that I haven't even touched the surface of with this damn podcast. Anyways. So the lesson in all of that is, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Which means y'all, more than anyone else, need to be educating yourselves on citizenship in this country as it pertains to partaking in voting, discussions on race that are uncomfortable for you, discussions on gender, because, we live in a patriarch society in Hispanic culture. So yeah, we need to start talking about gender in a fucking serious way and addressing the misogynistic culture that is Caribbean culture, especially. Discussions on women's rights, intersectional feminism, American history, etc. It's not enough to just stay in your Hispanic bubble. You can't be voting on policies that impact the lives of other groups of people and be in your safe, ignorant Hispanic bubble. You need to be willing to challenge yourself and the way you were raised to believe certain things that were either outdated as fuck or toxic AF. Which brings me to my next ass whooping, okay? Why the fuck are you all unable to see why supporting businesses that support Donald Trump is a bad idea? First of all, I saw a lot of comments of people talking about how we will be unable to cook properly if we don't use GOYA products. I've heard a lot of dumb shit in my life, but that is probably one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And that's saying something, because I have heard a lot of dumb shit, okay? I've heard a lot of it. I've heard all types of stuff, okay? I grew up with the internet for the most part, so I've seen and read many dumbass statements. Listen. If you need GOYA products, whether it's seasoning or beans or their sofrito, in order to make something edible, I'm sorry, you can't cook, okay? Because guess what? The dishes we prepare in the Hispanic culture predated our existence in America. It predated GOYA products. These companies were created in order to market to the Hispanic community to make money off of us, okay? That's where the term Hispanic Latino even comes from. When the media decided to open a market to cater to the small groups of Puerto Ricans in the Bronx, Cubans in Miami, and Mexicans in Cali and Texas, they were trying to figure out how to rope all these Spanish-speaking colonized immigrants, and they created the term Hispanic Latino. Okay, and by doing so, they were able to open up a market of products and media in order to have us buying into it. Yes, our broke asses in the 60s buying into it. Like, look at how many Hispanic people love West Side Story. because they feel like it touched on some of our issues. Sure, it was groundbreaking in film to have us represented on the screen. But do y'all realize that Rita Moreno was the only fucking Hispanic person in that movie? In a movie that was about Hispanics? Like, you guys let these white people do any fucking thing, have any fucking narrative, and you buy right into it because you feel like, ay, mira, it's me represented up there. But are they really representing you, or are they making money off of your story and stupidity? Because that's that shit that Goya and all of these other entities have been doing for years. And you guys just bend over and let them fuck you every time. Ask any Hispanic grandmother and they will tell you that hand making these ingredients that are in sazon and sofrito tastes 10,000 times better than the bullshit powder that comes in those packets of seasonings. And not only that, Goya loves to pack their products with MSG. And I don't even expect you guys to know what MSG is, because I know mad people have heard of it but don't bother to look it up and look up its harmful effects because they are resistant to self-educating. They don't want to know. It's like when you tell somebody what's in between the cookies of the Oreo and they don't want to know. And I'm like, look, you need to know though, because you need to have an educated choice, your educated background before you go make certain decisions. Like, I know what's in between the Oreo cookie. I know not to eat Oreos all the damn time. But look, MSG stands for monosodium glutamate, okay? The glutamate industry is 100% aware of their harmful effects that their MSG, the toxic substance they put into all of these products, okay? They know that ingesting their toxin can cause diabetes, which a lot of Hispanics suffer from, adrenal gland malfunction, which a lot of Hispanics suffer from, seizures, which a lot of Hispanics suffer from, high blood pressure, which a lot of Hispanics suffer from, excessive weight gain, which a lot of Hispanics suffer from, stroke, which a lot of Hispanics suffer from, and a myriad of other health issues. And you'll wonder why this is a problem. Well, maybe it's because we've been shoving Goya and all this bullshit into our bodies for literally decades, okay? Decades we've been doing this shit, especially in places like the Bronx, where the socioeconomic condition in those kinds of cities leads people to be living in the projects in low-income neighborhoods, working low-wage jobs, okay, and cannot afford to buy fresh fruit and vegetables. The same fresh fruit and vegetables that they have us picking for $2 a day in some fucking farm in Bumblefuck, Texas, okay? So I don't understand how the fuck all of you don't know this and how you can't put two and two together. You see all these headlines talking shit about Goya and people boycotting Goya, and instead of educating your fucking self, you go ahead and be like, all these conspiracy theorists, all these ridiculous bandwagoners, all these people trying to be fake woke, all these people, blah, blah, blah. You guys are fucking idiots. I can't with y'all. And I'm not talking about Hispanics specifically. I'm talking about, I'm not saying all Hispanics, but I'm talking about Hispanics that you know who you are. You know whatever your dumbass reaction was when you saw these articles being shared about people boycotting Goya because of their support of Donald fucking Trump. And this was your fucking first response. It's not that deep. It's not that big of a deal. Toxic ass behavior. Lots of you. The lot of you. And it's funny because a lot of people are probably going to be like, damn, she sounds mad as fuck. And it's like, I'm chilling, but at the same time, this to me, this episode is a verbal bow to all these fucking people. And for people who don't know what bow is, bow in Hispanic community means like an ass whooping. That's our word for our ass whooping. And when we were kids, they didn't say, you want me to get the belt? You want me to whip your ass? They didn't say that. No. They would say, do you want papao? Do you want papao? If you heard papao, you were like, I better skirt. I better stop whatever I'm doing because these bitches are about to beat my ass, okay? This is what this shit is, because I'm so fucking tired of having to talk about this. And I feel like I've been shouting this shit for fucking ever and nobody fucking listens. And I'm hoping that whoever's listening to this shit is like, damn, maybe I should probably care just a little bit. Maybe I should share this podcast. Maybe some people need to hear this. Maybe, I should support people who are actually talking about real shit. I don't know. It's just an idea. Pero like, you know who else has been suffering from these same health issues? Black people, because the same MSG and other toxins have been put into products geared toward them too. Which brings me to my next point. The racism and colorism in our community is at an all-time high in light of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I've seen a lot of great conversations being had. And I've seen a lot of detrimental conversations being had. Let me be crystal clear, okay? Any person or blogger on the internet can write an article or make an infographic on Canva, okay? Any fucking person can do that. I can make an infographic right now telling you all of the reasons why the Kama Sutra can cause cancer in the vagina, and people will blindly share that shit like it makes any damn sense for any reason. I've noticed that if any infographic is a new idea to a large group of people, it will go viral before people even try to do research to make sure that anything that was said is actually true. And it really baffles me because the amount of damaging infographics out there in regards to the Hispanic community and our conversations is literally sickening to me. My biggest one being the way these bloggers are discussing white privilege and light-skinned people in the Hispanic community. And the problem really, like the seed of the issue, is the fact that people are not used to having these conversations. So they're still trying to work out their own, journey with their own skin color within their ethnic group. And they're publicizing it because that's their job, right? It's an influencer's job or a blogger's job a lot of times to address when these kinds of things happen and where they're at with it, okay? And so in the journey of them trying to discover self, if they ever get there, they're sharing their fucking dumbass thought processes with everyone else. And because they're influencers and people look up to them, people are sharing their infographics, not realizing that these infographics are making us regress. We're going backwards, if anything. It's not helpful. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. As someone who has been studying these exact areas, basically since I had internet access as a teenager, and I'm 26 years old now, I'm going to say this. There is a large difference between being adjacent or in proximity to white privilege and actually having white privilege. And the reason why that differentiation is important is because when you say that light-skinned Latinos have to address their white privilege, you are sending the message to light-skinned Latinos that there's a part of them that's not reflective of their ethnic group, that they have a birthright by blood to because of the fact that they're light-skinned, and that in fact they have ownership of white privilege. If you don't understand white privilege, like, not only do you have to know what it means, but you also have to understand that the only people that have white privilege, that own white privilege, are Caucasian people. And a lot of people look at Hispanics and say, well, there's white people in the Hispanic community. That's not how it works, okay? I understand that there's race and there's ethnicity, but those things are social constructs created by the government to categorize us and push political special interest groups toward certain areas and having big business be able to market to different groups, like I mentioned before with GOYA, etc. There is a reason why the government categorizes people. It's not just about knowing who's living in America and letting that reflect in politics. It's also about how do we market to these people, where these people live. Think about it. If you live in Florida, right, Publix, for example. Publix, if for those who don't live in Florida, is a grocery store. But Publix is an experience when you go in there, to say the least. It's very hands-on, very customer service centric. And in order for them to have that kind of customer service, they pay their employees pretty competitively compared to other grocery stores. And that payment is reflected in their prices. So their prices for, a freaking thing of pasta is like $1 more than you'll buy at like a Walmart or Aldi, for example. But that upcharge is what you pay for the experience for. In order to get the Publix experience, you are paying extra for things that are not usually costing that much in other stores. But you're in Publix, so it is what it is. But you see, because of that upcharge, broke ass people are not going to be shopping at Publix. If they do, it's like one thing, or it's like a BOGO that they think is worth their time. But for the most part, it's mostly wealthier people or financially stable people that can shop at Publix. And so they're not going to put a Publix in the hood. They're just not going to. They're going to put Publix in either a middle America or in a high class area. And this is the same situation with something like Amscot. You always see Amscot, the cash advance place, in areas that are poor neighborhoods, because broke people always need to advance on their paycheck so they can pay their fucking bills, because they live paycheck to paycheck as it is. God forbid a fucking emergency happens or a pandemic goes on and they need to borrow from their next paycheck. So these kinds of things are based off of a location. Well, how do they figure out location? Well, first of all, they look at income levels, right? So they're looking at the median income level of each neighborhood, and they're looking at the race and ethnic group of people who live in those areas. So they're going to put things in those areas. How do you think a business would figure out what location? When you talk about opening a business, people say location, 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 because location matters. You're not gonna want to put an Amscot in a wealthy neighborhood. Why the fuck would they need a cash advance? You know what I mean? Like, they have savings accounts, most of those people, for like every category of their life. So location matters. And in order to benefit businesses, they put certain businesses that are geared towards certain demographics in certain areas. Well, how do you figure out a demographic? You got to know what their race and ethnic group is, what they're inclined to purchase. So I say all that to say that race and ethnicity are social constructs, and I understand that we live by them in American society, so they matter to people or whatever the fuck. But to my Hispanic people, you have to understand that for us, we are one people. Doesn't matter skin color. The skin color bullshit is what let the government fucking obsess over that shit. We need not obsess over that shit, because the thing is that in order to actually defeat white supremacy and white privilege within our community, for people who are adjacent to it, like myself, being light-skinned, what that means is actually being in spaces where only we are invited as light-skinned Hispanics by white people, because they want to see people reflective as closely to them as possible. Being in those spaces and standing up for our community and saying, I think we need more racial diversity in this project, in this business, in this particular department, or whatever the fuck, wherever you work. Your job is to stand up for the people who are not being represented and their interests are not being represented from your community because they're dark skinned. That is what it is to be adjacent to white privilege, to use the small platform, because again, this is what people don't understand. The reason why I say adjacent to white privilege is because we don't have white privilege, contrary to popular belief. When I walk into an employer, or in previous jobs that I've had, it's been very apparent to my employers, usually white people, that I am not white. I am not one of them. And I'm always labeled as, because of this, the sassy Latina, the passionate Latina. Oh, she's being sassy today because she's a Latina. When I'm not being sassy, I'm telling you that the way we're running this store right now, or this department or whatever, is not fucking working. And it's that you just get gaslighted all the time because they're like, well, she's just Hispanic, you know how they are, or she's just Spanish, you know how they are. That is the kind of treatment that I get. I don't get any fucking say in a lot of shit. I've tried, and you know what? I just keep trying. That's just what I do. Anyone who's worked with me, who listens to this podcast, will tell you and co-sign on the fact that even though I had no fucking say in a lot of shit because I didn't have the ownership of white privilege to have the influence and the power to say so, I always was like, well, what about this girl? What about that girl? These girls, these Afro-Latinas, or this black girl or whatever. I was constantly trying to put as many people of color in as many positions as possible, wherever I fucking worked. Okay? My first choice for different jobs was not the white man that was there. And I've been passed over for, promotions because of white men. And it wasn't until I took those positions finally after they left them that people realized that they should have picked me all along, because I am a hard worker and I'm very capable. But you know what? What is a fucking sassy Hispanic woman to a white man who, they own America? So this shit about white privilege is like so damaging, to do this thing of trying to act like light-skinned people are exempt from the treatment that Hispanics deal with, because people still don't fucking like us, whether you're white, black, tan, or whatever the fuck. If you're Hispanic, people have their prejudices and they're going to act accordingly. So doing this shit of making it seem like in an infographic that is very black and white, there's a lot of nuance that goes into being adjacent to white privilege in the Hispanic community, and an infographic can't possibly dive into all of that nuance. So you guys sharing shit about white, I'm not even going to get into white passing conversations, because I'm just gonna have to make an episode about that shit, because that is an own topic in of itself. But that shit is problematic as fuck. And you know what else? There's still kids in cages, bro. And those kids in cages are all kinds of colors, okay? They're not just black Hispanic kids or tan Hispanic kids. There's white Hispanic kids in those fucking cages. So this is just my point, that like we're majoring in the minors right now when it comes to having actually elevated, helpful conversations. Us focusing on like that part of it and then focusing on it in an incorrect way, because if we're talking about white privilege, we should be talking about being adjacent to it. And how can we, as Hispanics that are light-skinned, be proactive in the light of Black Lives Matter and talking about colorism and racism? How can we take the positions that we're given by nature of being light-skinned and flip it into this proactive message where we are calling for inclusion of higher ups, to add our Afro-Latina sisters to the table, to adding a different view of LatinoAmerica, to make sure that people understand that LatinoAmerica is very diverse, is multicultural, and is beautiful as it is. And we just have to get to this place where we're actually making change, instead of just sitting around and talking about these semantics over little different things. And it's like, you know what? I don't see how you telling me I have white privilege, which isn't even true, because I don't have it. I'm adjacent to it, but I don't have it. Okay, I don't own it. I can't walk up to a white man and he thinks I'm his equal. Okay, I'm still Hispanic, whether you guys want to acknowledge it or not. That's still the case. So we need to actually be doing shit that's actually helpful, instead of having these dumbass conversations that are going nowhere. They're going in circles, and they're just they're breeding more comments in sections where people are saying, well, you're white, you're not Hispanic, okay? How is that helping? Because if that's the case, then conversely, are you telling me that the black people in our community are not Hispanic? Because they are. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And again, the kids in these fucking cages, you guys, I understand there's a lot going on in the world right now, but we cannot continue to be asleep on these kids in cages. And I don't care what people say. I understand that it's ICE that has them in cages, but ICE is under the direction of DC, okay? Of Donald Trump in Washington, DC. So you voting for Donald Trump is not only voting for oppression of your people, but it's also perpetuating the racist undertone of how this country and its systems have treated our people for a long time. So I say all of this to say that you guys need to wake the fuck up, because they're poisoning your fucking food. Goya and everybody else, they're all sellouts. They're poisoning your fucking food. They're brainwashing the fuck out of you and your racism, perpetuating that shit, spreading propaganda that's not even real on Facebook and wherever to make you inclined to believe that Donald Trump is somehow trying to help us when he's not, and he hasn't been the entire time. You guys don't understand that this guy is a millionaire and he's not a politician. He came into this position being sponsored by the Republicans, and he's trying to do whatever he can to protect big business, because once he leaves the presidency, because he can only be there for a max of 8 years, once he leaves the presidency, he wants to be able to reap the benefits of the policies he's put in place to help big businesses. So stop being fucking idiots and thinking that this guy gives a fuck about you. He does not care about us. He does not care about us. He cares about his own property. That's all that he cares about. So can you guys stop acting like this person is going to actually endorse anything that helps us? And the fact that Goya, so if you ask me, no, I'm not surprised that Goya fucking supports Donald Trump, because Goya is killing its own people. So no, I'm not surprised. And I'm more than happy to fucking boycott that shit. I will boycott MSG. That I'm okay with that. I'm okay with boycotting MSG. I'm okay with boycotting strokes, heart attacks, seizures, adrenal gland issues, diabetes. I'm okay with boycotting that shit. I'm good with that. So in closing, fuck Donald Trump, fuck Goya, fuck ICE, and don't be fucking racist, and actually use your white privilege, your adjacency to white privilege, to actually stand for something, okay? And fucking, can you please vote? Because this shit about not voting is not gonna fly, okay? You guys need to get your ass up and go vote, or do your mail-in ballot. So either do one or the other, but you need to fucking vote. This shit is not a game. I don't understand why people think that this shit is just something they could just not do. If you're a citizen of the United States, you should fucking be voting, especially if you're Hispanic. Fuck them. If anything, we should be flexing all of our abilities as citizens, because there's a lot of us there's a lot of us in our community who are not represented in the ballots, who can't vote because they're not citizens. So why the fuck are you not using your privilege as a citizen to vote to represent your people? What's wrong with y'all? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I cannot wait for the next episode, because we are going to be turning right into talking about how the government is poisoning all of you right now. And you don't even know it. Some of you know it, but a lot of you don't. So we're going to be talking about our food, how the government's fucking killing us right now, and how we need to take back control of our food system and put money back into the farmers' hands. All that shit's coming next episode. Please subscribe and share if you care, you guys. These fucking episodes cost a lot of my time to get together and put them together and edit them and all that shit. So please, if you guys are listening and you're enjoying it, please do not hesitate to share it on your Instagram stories, or and tag me in it so I can share your page back. Please support your sister, because this shit really matters, and I really hope that a lot of people will take this seriously and kind of reflect on how they can, be a better Hispanic, because right now we're not doing so hot. And if we want to take it down one bando at a time, we need to all get on the same page. So I will see you guys all then. Love you guys. Bye.